Hello and welcome to the chesscreator.com YouTube video channel. In today's video I'm going to video annotate a game I played in a bullet tournament. Now normally my bullet results are pretty mediocre at best. In this particular tournament I came 28th out of 150, so nothing spectacular. But that being said, I had a nice victory against an opponent rated over 350 points above my own rating. So statistically speaking, that's a pretty pleasing win. It was in one of my pet lines, which is in the Exchange French, and the game commenced as follows: e4, e6, d4, d5, and white enters the Exchange French. Now the Exchange French can be a bit dull. If black recaptures with this pawn, it can often lead to very symmetrical positions, which are a little drawish, particularly for bullet. So what I've been doing is kind of mixing ideas between the French and the Scandinavian, which is also called the centre counter, and recapturing the pawn with the queen. Now very often the queen is pushed back next move either by knight c3 or some other move, and that happens in this game also, but that's fine. Queen retreats, and basically the idea of this variation is something I've seen King's Crusher play very well, and it's to fianchetto the queenside bishop and then basically develop normally, but actually encouraging and stimulating white to capture and create double pawns and getting access to the g-file. I'll explain what I mean. The game continues with these moves: b6, white continues to develop normally, I fianchetto the bishop, and white castles. And at this point white has a fixed target, and he's castled early, and whilst my development is lagging behind, I have a plan at least as to what I'm going to do. Very often in the French I find people play bishop g5, looking to pin the knight to the queen. Here I pretty much ignore that pin, continues to develop. Here white is placing extra pressure on this poor knight, again to exploit the pin, but that's fine. I'm actually hoping that white captures on f6, and I will recapture with the pawn, and that gives me access to this lovely g-file. This game continues: queen c7, knight takes f6, and I recapture with the pawn. And at this point I have the position pretty much that I wanted once I entered into the Exchange French lines. So pretty much always when this happens there's a little bit of a pause and a think from white. It's probably quite an unexpected turn of events. The game continues: bishop h4, bishop d6, bishop g3, and I facilitate the exchange of dark square bishops. I then castle long, and again I'm not that unhappy with my position. I have a semi-open h-file, semi-open g-file, and I'm also up on the clock a little bit as well. So the game continued: rook c1, f5, and white starts to apply pressure. Now this is a little bit uncomfortable, but again actually I'm not overly concerned, because I actually want him to capture either way, with this d-file pawn, so I can unleash the bishop and give that some more freedom down this lovely diagonal. So the game continues as follows. This is just really a pawn sack, temporary pawn sack, and I'm now on the g-file. And again, even though there's some pressure here with the white queen and white rook and a couple of pawns, I think I have a reasonable position. I also have a tactic up my sleeve that if white captures either way with this pawn, I can play knight e5 and threaten this knight, capturing it with check, at the same time as exposing white's queen to the rook on d1. So this game continues. d6, just a prophylactic move to slow down white's pawn storm slightly. d takes, recapture, and at this point I have the bishop on this lovely diagonal. It's now liberated and it's pointing at g2 along with the rook on the g-file. So the game continues. a3. I didn't really understand this move. In bullet it's often a good tactic just to try and blast open the lines, and a3 just seemed completely unnecessary. So at this point I notice quite an interesting tactic, which is if I play knight e5, then I'm threatening the queen, and if the queen moves, then I can capture the knight with check, and if the bishop recaptures, I've then got the possibility of capturing the bishop on f3 and exploiting the pinned pawn. So amazingly, for once, I actually managed to calculate something in a bullet game against a much stronger opponent. So the game continues. Knight e5, and here my opponent responds with a4. I'm not really sure. Clearly they've missed all the threats. They've left their queen on the same file as my rook, and they have this double attack and the threat of the pin on the g file. So at this point the clocks are about equal, because I spent a little bit of time calculating the previous move. So capture the queen, bishop recaptures, and at this point I expose the beauty of the pin on the g file as follows. So at this point I material up, and I also have quite a nice positional advantage as well. I just have to be a little bit careful about the pawn storm, and so for the moment I decide to just attack white's king with the bishop and rook combination, and also these pawns, just to expose the position a bit more. Game continues. g3, f5, just to restrain this pawn from going any further. h5, again my queen is playing a prophylactic role, but also she has access to b6, which could be useful if I can swing the rook across. Game continues. h5, I'm just looking to rip open the king position. a takes b5, again I'm just conscious of the pawn storm, but my pawn on a7 is restraining the b pawn, and the fact that white now has doubled pawns, they're just too slow to get into the game really. So game continues. h4, at this point I'm feeling pretty happy. King h2, check, pawn recaptures, h8 check, and at this point it's looking a little dire for white rather. I have the ability to move the queen to queen b6 to attack these two squares. My bishop is covering these two squares, and my rook is bearing down. So I actually miss a forced mate in 2, I think, from this position. But anyway, I still win the game with quite a nice finish. So king g1, and at this point I think rook h1 was no, rook h1 was not checkmate, so I didn't miss a mate in 2. Oh, okay, cool. So I played queen b6, basically stopping the king from making a run for it, which would have been a little bit annoying in a bullet game. So rook c7 I think was the only move, and at that point I did miss a mate opportunity with rook h1, but as soon as I play the move, which was purely prophylactic to stop these pawns having any hope of causing any trouble, just basically so it's a king blockade and it would allow me to bring my queen into the game, perhaps something like queen e3. But anyway, that's something of a moot point because the game continued with white's only move, and it's too slow. There is no escape. Rook h1 is end of game. So I video annotated this for 2 reasons. Firstly, I was quite pleased to actually have quite a nice victory against a significantly stronger opponent, well over 2,000 and well over 350 points above my own rating. But also I hope it gives you a little insight into this kind of alternative to playing the drawish kind of French exchange. Just to repeat the themes, it's recapture with the queen. When the queen is pushed back, that's fine. The basic plan is to fianchetto the bishop, encourage or allow white to double the pawns after his castles, prepare for queenside castling, and hopefully get something like this position where there is pressure on the g file. It's I often get games where I can double the rooks quite easily. The queen is also usefully placed on c7, where she can sometimes swing across to h2 or indeed to g7 to sometimes get a double or triple battery. And the bishop often plays its part both defensively and often in combination with a single rook or double rook on the g file, very often resulting in some form of pin of this pawn. So hopefully that's useful. If it is, I hope you'll consider subscribing. It's free after all, and if not, I wish you well. If there are any questions, please send them to me via YouTube. Thanks very much.